Hello, this is John Quadrino. I'll be delivering a talk on transitioning from the military to a pen tester profession. For this talk, I am joined by fellow veteran teammates on the Optiv Attack and Pen team. The talk we were giving is Soldier to Civilian, from aim higher to aim cyber. In this talk, we share some insight, mentorship, and lessons learned from our experience transitioning from the military to the pen tester field in industry. Although this talk is intended to mentor towards penetration testing, a lot of the best practices that we share apply to cybersecurity in general. As an overview, we are going to discuss system info, aka Know Thyself, which is going to be broken out into the mentorship portion, all things in moderation, knowing thyself, and then lastly, document. After that, we do discuss briefly some common pitfalls. I am John Quadrino. I'm a security consultant with Optiv, and I'm also a defensive cyberspace operator for the Kansas Air National Guard. My background, briefly, is in 2012, I went to the Air Force Academy. I got a BS in philosophy. And then from there, I worked in cyberspace operations, ranging from working at Base Com, doing some US Cybercom NSA work at Fort Meade, and then concluding my active duty time doing enterprise operations out of Colorado, essentially some knock-sock functions for the enterprise. So the overarching principle or organizing structure for this talk is going to be inspired by the ancient temple of Apollo at Delphi. In ancient Greece, many warriors, scholars, and leaders would visit the temple at Delphi, seeking wisdom, guidance, and truth. And so at this temple, there were two famous things inscribed that inspired many philosophers, to include Plato. So the first thing that everyone knows is know thyself. But another thing that's actually written or inscribed is also all things in moderation. So that's how this talk is going to be structured. But before we jump into that, somebody must have been inspired and instructed people to actually inscribe those things at that temple. And so I want to start with this idea of the teacher or the mentor. So I'm going to hand this off to Travis, who's going to talk about the role of the mentor.
Hello, my name is Travis Weathers. I'm a practice director on the Attack and Penetration team. I've been with Optiv for nearly 8 years. Prior to Optiv, I spent 12 years in Army and Joint Special Operations in various capacities, to include a radio operator in the support of the global war on terrorism. I was also a communication advisor to the Commanding General of USASOC, as well as the Deputy Commanding General of US SOCOM. I had the great privilege of representing the United States Army Special Operation Command while I served as a military freefall parachute demonstrator on the Black Daggers parachute team. As you start your branch's transition program, the most beneficial thing that you can do is find a mentor. The mentor does not need to be a veteran, although a veteran will be able to help assist with converting military skills into applicable job roles, help set realistic expectations as it pertains to salary, core competencies, and job titles, resume building or simplification, as well as interview preparation. While this talk is mainly focused on penetration testing, the public sector offers a plethora of job roles to suit your passion. How does the public job market differ from, say, a cyber warrant officer in the United States Army? A cyber warrant officer in the Army is typically a jack of all trades. At a single duty station, they might perform defensive operations, advise or operate a few red team scenarios, perform product integration, oversee configuration management, or even manage a SOC. The second part of your transition is to identify your niche, be it penetration testing, incident response, threat intelligence, product integration, or the sales of services and solutions. During this process, you want to narrow down your job search. In penetration testing, there's typically two paths you can take. The first path is consulting, where you will have a new client, new industry, new environment every week or month. The second path is joining an internal red team. When working an internal red team for, say, a financial firm, a tech company, or retailer, you'll typically be narrowly focused on specific goals within the same environment. The hiring process varies based on the organization. for a technical role, such as a penetration tester. You should be expecting to take a practical exam, sit a technical panel interview, as well as perform a soft skills assessment. Work-life balance. So fast forward. You now have your DD-214 and you just signed your first job offer. While separating from the service can be rewarding, it can also be heartbreaking at the same time. I struggled with this one for many years. One day, you go from wearing a uniform in a faraway land, ready to lay down everything for a cause that's greater to yourself. The next day, you're wearing your pajamas behind a computer, alone in a small home office, while your former team is gearing up for another rotation. As you begin your transition process and start your new job, it's critical for you to identify your new purpose, and that purpose should be enforced with specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based goals. Your new civilian job is not a deployment, so leverage your time efficiently to meet your work requirements and take time off to reset. It's important to spend that much needed time with your family and friends and decompress at the end of the day. Remote work. While remote work is incredibly rewarding, it comes with its downsides as well. It can turn you into Thor rather quick. So wake up in the morning, make your bed, do your PT, take care of yourself, and hold yourself accountable. Working remote, you control your calendar. Be accountable for what you do during your workday. Social networking, leverage it. While you're in the military, OPSEC put its limitations in place. Now that you're out, meet people, do CTFs, go to conferences. You'll be amazed at how small the penetration testing industry really is. Within a couple years, you'll have connections at just about every company, every consulting firm within the United States. So as I wrap up my portion of the presentation, I'm going to leave you with a simple challenge. That challenge is get a mentor. Once you've accepted your first job offer, be the mentor. I held off on being a mentor until I was a people leader within the penetration testing industry. While I've helped place many folks over the years, I could have helped so many more had I started sooner. Once you have that first job offer in your hand, you've already experienced resume conversions, searching the job market, the interview process, salary negotiations. So find someone who is starting the process, mentor them, and if you're anything like me, it will become your new purpose.
So Travis ended with that challenge. Once you had and continue to have a mentor, it's now your duty to give back to the community and become a mentor. And so as a mentor, one of the things that you're going to be guiding prospective pen testers in is going to be all things in moderation. All things in moderation in the penetration testing profession really means having a breadth of knowledge. Specialization is excellent. However, most likely your team will provide consultants for multiple types of engagements. So for example, at Optiv, we do internal testing. We'll have a client hook up a remote testing appliance or a specially provisioned VM in their internal environment, and we'll emulate, or actually we will execute a pen test from that internal asset. For external testing, we will take on the role of the external attacker and attack their perimeter and see where we can go from there when it comes to sensitive data and sensitive networks. Wireless testing, we will physically go out and we will assess their wireless environment. I mean, we could even remotely assess their wireless environment as well. We will do physical tests and go visit their site, and we'll walk around their perimeter. We'll do some tailgating and some other some pretty cool engagements. And then lastly, we also do some form of social engineering, whether it be doing spear phishing campaigns and assessing security awareness, or we'll do voice phishing or voice pretexting engagements as well. And so, when it comes to all things in moderation, it's good to know, to have some proficiency across those engagements. Expectation is that you're not going to know all of them, right? So, you might be familiar with one, it might have been a while, but the more of those that you can do, the stronger of a teammate you're going to be. And so for this, my recommendation when it comes to mentoring others, and then also, being mentored on this topic, is to ask about it during the interview. Ask what opportunities, what challenges are available for you to learn, for you to specialize in more things. And then once you join the team, or once you join the Optiv team, ask your management, ask your team, hey, we talked about this during the interview. I actually would like to go on physical assessments. And then discussions will occur about shadowing and multiple engagements, doing the engagements, and then eventually even teaching others for those particular engagements. So having covered all things in moderation, next we're going to touch on knowing thyself. Knowing thyself is definitely the more well-known inscription on the ancient temple of Delphi. But what does it mean, let alone in cybersecurity? It seems awfully abstract for a cybersecurity mentorship discussion. Garrett shares his insight on the matter after briefly introducing himself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Garrett Foster. I am a senior security consultant here at Optiv. I am an Air Force veteran. I served from 2007 to 2013. I worked in aircraft maintenance. Specifically, I was a crew chief. So if you're not familiar with that, basically kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, working on various different parts of the aircraft. For the first 4 years, I was actually stationed at McConnell Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas, with the 22nd Aircraft Maintenance Squadron, working on the KC-135R, which is those big old gas stations in the sky, the refuelers, which was a lot of fun, very rewarding experience. Got to see a lot of the world, got to travel. Overall, I think in those 4 years, while I was on flying status, I hit 28 different countries. So awesome. Also deployed twice to Qatar. For the last 2 years, I was stationed at Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa, Japan, which was awesome for me because when I was a kid growing up, my father was in the Marine Corps and he was stationed at Camp Foster in Okinawa. So going back as an adult was a cool experience. There I was part of the 353rd Special Operations Maintenance Squadron working on the MC-130P. And that was an experience as well. I didn't get to travel as much. I think I bounced back and forth between there and Korea a couple times. And after that, I came back home, and now I'm living here in Portland, Oregon. So what my portion of this is, and what I really wanted to focus on was really kind of knowing yourself and really understanding that what comes with this is a huge dose of humility. I know when speaking personally about it, while I was active duty, you really wanted to be the smartest guy in the room. You wanted to be the one that knew everything, and even sometimes to a fault, and I was scared to not admit when I didn't know something. But to be honest with you, in this industry, that doesn't really fly. You really have to look within and understand what you do know and what you don't. And what we want to focus on is knowing your tools, the different tactics, tools, procedures, or TTPs, and then the corrective action for when you perform those attacks, and then what you don't know. And that's a difficult one, and we're going to kind of discuss that. And then later, our buddy Kevin is going to take over and talk about documenting yourself. Okay, so with the tools, TTPs, and then like the fix actions, what we mean when we say that is you're going to be using a collection of tools every day, and it's going to be a constant flow of using those things, and you really want to be a master of that craft. So you may have a collection of tools that you focus on. Some of the examples in the slide are Burp Suite, which, if you're not familiar, is a web application pen testing tool, or CrackMap Exec is kind of more of an Active Directory focus tool. Nessus, vulnerability scanners. What you really need to focus on is how those tools work, what they do, what they could break, and the application of those. And then kind of pivoting on that is using the tool, but actually what the action you're performing is. So here we talk about pass the hash and golden tickets and password guessing. And these are all the result of those tools. So it's essential that you know what they are, what they do, and how those work. Um, as far as the corrective action, a lot of our job, like a very very large portion of it, is focusing on working with our clients and how to get those situations mitigated, right? So we might find a vulnerability of some type, they weak or guessable passwords. So how do we get that corrected? How do we work with the client to kind of to remediate that situation? Maybe there is an overly permissive group policy. What steps do they need to take to get that fixed? Maybe they had it's a perimeter assessment, and we're seeing remote administration protocols like SSH or SNMP or something similar to that. What's the corrective action to mitigate their risk? And until you really look within and understand if you do know that or if you don't know that, you're not going to be super successful, but there is the opportunity for growth there, and knowing what you don't know is essential in that department. Okay, so what do you not know? When we say that was like, what do you? It's methodology and common TTPs, just like the slide says. So I know when I was first getting started in this, when I was transitioning, from going from a wrench turner to a hacker, it was just like drinking from a fire hose. And the best assets for me were to use like the slide says, is CTFs and hack the box and try hack me. And if you're not familiar with those, like CTS or capture the flags, it's kind of like the kids game that we played when, it's two teams or more going after the enemy flag and coming back with it. Well, in InfoSec, a CTF, the flag is, a string or a reward at the end of a puzzle that you get for hacking into like a certain challenge. And then Hack the Box and Try Hack Me are actual services that provide like vulnerable different types of workstations, whether that be Linux, a Windows machine, a domain controller, things of that nature, that teach you what we just talked with those tools and procedures in an environment where you can test them and get used to them and really familiarize yourself with those. So when you know that you don't know something, those types of services are great for remediating that and saying, yes, I do know what that tool does. I do know what the action is. And I do know how to get it remediated. Um, when using those, though, a lot of people, when they're coming up, is that they focus on write-ups. Another large part is that report that we write, that we deliver to clients, and speaking to um, perhaps a crowd that isn't as familiar as we are, as far as the approaches that we're taking, the procedures. So by practicing the write-ups and reading the write-ups, you get more comfortable with the flow, the verbiage, and the things that you want to effectively communicate to your clients. And then, once you start getting comfortable, there's so many different industry certifications that are available. Probably the most popular that if for this industry is the OSCP. That's kind of like the ground level, and then you work your way up from there. And you use that, which will show you, what do I not know? Once you get that certification, now you know what you can validate what you do know. So the other thing too is we want to focus on InfoSec news. Is this industry, it is quick, it's rapid fire. If you're familiar, Patch Tuesday and then Exploit Wednesday, that time of the month, it just is nonstop. So a great resource, oddly enough, for this is Twitter, because it's just that quick. Someone comes up with a new tool, or there's a new vulnerability, or an O day or N day drops, like it's going to hit Twitter. And then as soon as you build out that feed, you're going to see all that communication coming back and forth based on who you follow, and you'll see things quicker than most. And Travis has already really touched heavily on Get a Mentor, and this is important. I don't want to piggyback or anything, but when I first got started, it was I joined a lot of Discord servers, and one of them that's available to us is a Discord server called VetSec, and it's the same situation. Lots of folks transitioning from active duty, guard duty, whatever it may be, and then trying to break their way into the infosec industry, and the VetSec server is fantastic. Check those out. I know some big industry types like John Hammond or the Cyber Mentor. His name escapes me right now, but those folks are members of those Discord channel. And then something I'm extremely passionate about is to really help you know yourself is building a lab. You know, when you first hear that, you're like, okay, do I need to go buy server equipment? Do I got to build a rack? Is my power bill going to go through the roof? Like, am I about to bake myself in my office? And ultimately, no. You know, if you've already got existing hardware, you have the ability to build a lab. Even, you know, the most like laptops with 8 gigs of RAM, you have the option and the ability to build out a lab. And the reason why it's so important to me is because this is where I did most of my learning. I transitioned from aircraft maintenance to working IT and system admin type work. So virtualization and practicing and constantly doing, you know, deploying an Active Directory environment, promoting it to a domain controller, joining workstations, leaving, and configuring group policies and security controls and things of that nature. As soon as I kept doing those, it became second nature. And then that experience, that virtualization, it translated into the infosec side, because now I could go into that same environment that I built out and I could start breaking things. And because it's virtualized, you break something, you hit the reset button, you get to start back over again. So you're not doing, you're not testing in prod, which is a huge no-no. So, you know, a laptop, a desktop, whatever it may be, you can use options like VirtualBox, VMware, and really start deploying this stuff, finding out a different tactic that people are doing research on. For example, Kerber roasting. How does that happen? What's the actual case where, you know, an account becomes Kerber roastable? You can build out the lab, you can create the Kerber roastable account, you can run the attack, see what it looks like, and then experience what the remediation steps looks like. I can't recommend this enough. Just, if there's one thing you take from this, build out a home lab. But that's it for me. Up next is going to be Kevin. Thanks so much for your time.
Knowing thyself is a major piece of this battle. However, getting that penetration tester role you want requires you to also communicate thyself. In this section, Kevin covers how to best communicate by documenting thyself in the resume and how to best communicate in the interview. I conclude this section with some question examples you may face in the interview.
I'm Kevin Ayala. I'm a security consultant here at Optiv, part of the Attack and Pen team. A little bit of my background: I was a cavalry scout stationed in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I've been in the offensive security world for almost 4 years now, and I'm gonna be honest with you. I struggled with the transition from military to civilian. What helped me break into the field was having a mentor and networking. I won't go over everything Travis did because he did an amazing job. But having a mentor definitely changed everything for me. So document. We're gonna go over the resume, and we're gonna go over interview. I am no expert, so what I'm gonna be covering, it's gonna be based on what I've noticed, what I experienced, and what the team have seen. So tailor your resume. Tailor your experience to what matters for the role that you're applying to. What do I mean by this? So, you know, read the job descriptions, and depending on what the job description is requiring, tailor your resume to match that. But also, please don't go at adding descriptions, part of descriptions to your resume if you can't perform that. Another thing is, don't have the same resume for all the positions you're applying for. You will run into times where they're requiring different things, and tailoring your resume will give you that better chance of getting that interview. This is not a government job resume, so lock it down to one page. Include certifications, tools, experience, and education. You know, if you're applying for a pen test role, if you have the OSCP, add the OSCP in the resume. This is quality over quantity, not an alphabet soup. So don't, you know, come out of the military thinking that all the certifications you've had in the military are going to apply to civilian, because a lot of times it's not going to happen. So do your research and make sure that the certifications you're adding to your resume are going to help you with that transition. And bedazzle your resume, sort of. So what I mean is, you know, add some borders, use some bold and readable titles. What I'm trying to say is, make sure that you're highlighting the key factors of a resume. So make sure you're pointing out the important stuff. Don't start adding a bunch of different color fonts and backgrounds. That's not what I mean by bedazzle your resume. Remember, you're applying for a pen test position and not a web designer position. The interview. So interviews are like marathons, multiple gates to confront and pass. So what I mean by that, you're going to have the HR, the technical operator team, and management team. So you're going to have to talk to recruiters. You're going to have the technical interviews, and this is your time to shine and show that all the hard work you put in, it's going to pay off, right? Be ready for scenario-based questions. And then you're going to be talking to the management team. They're going to want to see your soft skills. Can you hold a conversation? Are you a team player?
When it comes to the interview, a good general approach is going to be confident. It's about you. So present your best self, but don't be overly confident. It's about you, so don't go overboard. Know your audience. Depending on your audience, it's going to change the terms you use and what you talk about. Do they have the same background as you? Do they have the same MOS or the same ADSE? Or sorry, AFSE? Were they at the same duty station or doing the same mission? Did you work with them prior to this? This will allow you to gauge on whether or not to use acronyms. Even in military communities, acronyms mean different things. You probably should just shy away from them. And then lastly, keep it professional. The intent of a good interviewer is to put you at ease and allow your knowledge and your expertise to flow, but don't take that to mean you should be unprofessional. I mean, this is a job interview after all. So next I include some sample questions that I thought were tricky and then really just a good sampling for you to practice on. So the first question really I think is the most challenging question, and it happened to be the question I was least prepared for. And that question was, how would you like to be compensated for this job? How much money, how many benefits would you like to receive to do this job? For some reason, this threw me off. I received this question first, from an HR rep in both cases. And it threw me off because it was so direct. Like, how are you supposed to respond to this question? If you say an answer that's too large, you sound like unrealistic, or you sound like potentially overqualified for this job. If you answer this question too low, you sound desperate, maybe overmotivated for this particular role. My recommendation on this question is, well, firstly, be honest, try to hit it in a acceptable range, which means do research, know what that range is. But also, I view this question as, how confident are you in this role? And so framing it that way, if you give an answer that's too low, you're pretty much saying, I don't really have confidence in this role. If you frame the response too high, you're saying, I need to be in a senior role for this and not this position necessarily. And so my recommendation is do that research and then try to correctly value yourself. Another good question that I think you're guaranteed to see that's in that soft skill realm is, what is a weakness of yours? And so this question requires preparation. Think beforehand, what is a weakness of yours that is correctable? What is a weakness of yours that you or a coworker has identified that you want to correct? What you don't want to do is provide a weakness to potentially your future employer, your future teammate, your future boss. What you don't want to do is give them this view of yourself that you have an issue you cannot fix. So just be careful on this. I'm not saying lack integrity in your response, but be humble and reflect on what's something that you think you could work on. That brings us to our last question, which is to describe a time you overcame an obstacle in a team environment. When you answer this, keep in mind context. This question is really to uplift you and also show some self-analysis, some humility. But when I think about a time that I had an obstacle, you want it to be something that, reflects your professionalism, or reflects your ability to solve problems. Think back to your career. Was there a project where you and some like-minded individuals were motivated, but you just kept disagreeing? How did you remedy that? That would be a good anecdote or vignette to share. Having covered these example questions, next we discuss common pitfalls. So having discussed the role of the mentor, knowing thyself, and all things in moderation, as it applies to transitioning from the military into penetration testing in industry, we're now going to cover, just from our collective experiences, common pitfalls. So the way we've actually broken this out is going to be first common pitfalls when it comes to knowing thyself, and then followed by common pitfalls when it comes to documenting thyself. So for knowledge pitfalls, sometimes you're not going to know the correct tools or TTPs needed for that particular role. When that occurs, stay confident, be humble, go back to your home lab, build out the actual vulnerability if you can, or could make that misconfiguration manually. Then test your ability to take advantage of it, to leverage it, and find out why it didn't work, how to remediate it. And with that in mind, there are CTFs that might even have a theme that relates to a gap that you've discovered. There's also, of course, hack the box and try hack me. So as mentioned, when you do this, learn what the dependencies are. What are the requirements? What are the conditions needed for you to be successful in exploiting this misconfiguration? How does it break? When does it not actually work? What does that log or error look like when it doesn't work, and why? Another common pitfall during an interview potentially is going to be not knowing a recent vulnerability, TTP, or fix action. And so in this case, to cite Garrett, maybe have a Twitter. You don't need to be external on your Twitter. You don't need to tweet, right? But it's a great ingest point for very current TTPs. So stay current through Twitter. Watch videos from people like John Hammond. Read good write-ups as they come out for things like Hack the Box. And then also practice in your home lab. This brings us to our documentation pitfalls. What if you don't hear back from the HR team? Or what if you hear back from them, but it looks like an automated email? Well, do you have the required experience or background that they were looking for? Generally, when teams are looking to plus one or add multiple consultants, they're going to list what experience they're looking for. And that number might be 5 years, and you might have 2. That they might be asking for people with an AppSec background, and you might be more geared towards different type of engagements. Another issue with maybe not hearing back from the team is, did you send the required documentation for the role? Did the role request a cover letter and you just forgot to send it, or you didn't know what a cover letter was? And then, in line with this, if you don't hear back from the team, reach out, ask for feedback, ask, hey, I didn't hear back from you. Is there a reason why? Did you leave some effort on the field is another common pitfall. Sometimes you're going to leave an interview and you're going to know it did not go well. Maybe during the interview, you honestly wanted to say, all right, over, and then just end the interview, right? If that's the case, prepare more, prepare differently. Try again with different teams. The very act of interviewing is actually a part of your development. A question you might get asked that you didn't do well with, you can put in your back pocket and prepare for it and do well on it next time. An important note here is don't assume military experiences are going to translate exactly in a 1-to-1 ratio to a civilian role. In particular, from my experience with cyberspace operations in the Air Force, it is very difficult to find an exact equivalency on the civilian side other than enterprise IT. There's very few units that have an exact tie-in to a civilian role. And then lastly here, when it comes to leaving some effort on the field. Reach out and ask for feedback. Ask about, what you could have done better. Where did you miss the mark? If you have any questions, please put them in the Discord. Even if it's after the chat, our teammates can get a hold of us. Might even be able to pass, a LinkedIn account or something so that we could mentor and kind of start that conversation. In summary, we covered the application of lessons from ancient Greek philosophy to your transition from military service to hacking in the civilian industry. Travis talked mentorship, choosing the right adventure, work-life balance, and he threw down a challenge to mentor. Good mentors meet their mentorees where they're at, and they nudge them in the right direction. Next, I mentioned the need to have breadth across your future team's engagements, in addition to specializing in external and internal pen tests. Afterward, Garrett tackled the abstract concept of knowing thyself. He talked about knowing certain tools, TTPs, and how to learn more by using a home lab. Lastly, he foot-stomped being humble enough to know when and what you don't know. Kevin communicated the idea of documenting thyself. Knowing thyself is important in the pursuit of a cybersecurity role. However, you need to be able to communicate it through the resume and through the interview. Finally, I conclude our presentation sharing common pitfalls we encountered firsthand in our quest to join the penetration test field. That concludes our presentation. As a reminder, we are hiring security consultants and would love to have you join the Optiv team. Job offerings are available through Optiv's page and LinkedIn and through the Optiv website. If you have any questions on this role or anything in the presentation, please ping me.